Welcome, everyone, to episode 56 of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. I'm your host, Jean, the Strategy Wargamer, and I am here with my co-hosts, Matt, the Historical Gamer, and Eric, Tortuga Power. How you guys doing?
Meh.
I'm doing great. I'm not a gnat.
Meh.
I'm more than just a gnat.
Meh. I'm in a rut. There's nothing I want to play.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I just feel like the last couple of weeks I've just not really been into much.
Well, you know what you should do is dust off that copy of IL-2 that you have and haven't played and come fly with us.
You know, I probably should. I'm in the middle of painting my den, and so this place is a mess, and I may have to go pack my joystick up because we're going to be having people showing our condo before too long, so...
Look, nothing says buy me like a house or a condo with a full flight center set up.
And 2 giant boom arms with mics and cameras all dangling off them too, yeah, right?
Make the room mauve.
What?
I think that the room for the flight setup should be mauve.
I don't know what that is.
As a color, it's like purplish, pinkish.
It's like a dark blue, but I currently half the room is primed at the moment, so it's like white on like dark blue.
There we go. We've finished the Single Malt Strategy podcast. We've breached new ground. We're now talking about home improvement.
Real Estate Podcast, episode number 1 of the drinking.
It wasn't working out so well. Who are we kidding?
Painting with Beer, hosted by the Historical Gamer.
There are a couple of games that I know you're going to be motivated on. So
they?
one of them is one of your most requested games that you always talk about. B17, the sequel. So I know that recently just got announced, and I wanted to hear your feedback on that.
Now, before are we going to talk about what we've been playing, or do you want to jump right into the meat of the?
Yeah, let's cover that. So I've been playing a couple of new games. One of them is really, really interesting, really cool. I haven't ever. It was a game that I picked up, and it has some really good reviews on Steam, and it's called Nimbatus Space Drone Constructor. And I decided to pick it up because it kind of reminded me of FTL a little bit, but with drones. And it's a really, really incredible game. You're basically, the whole point of the game is you make drones, right? You are part of this spaceship that's trying to, I guess, outrun this enemy that's trying to chase you throughout the galaxy, and you're making drones to go into planets to get resources and also fight enemies. And it's really cool, the dynamics of it. So, you make your own drones, so they could be really small, designed for exploration. You can make drones that are, geared up with weapons, and you have to kind of, make sure that if you make a drone that's fully set up for, a massive amount of guns, right? You have to make sure that has enough energy, like batteries and stuff like that, to power the lasers. And then you also, if you put engines on there, you got to make sure that has enough propellant to give it enough fuel to get it to where it goes. You design where the aft, what do you call it that's on the Apollo spacecraft, the afterburners, to make it go left or right or up or down.
Thrusters.
Thrusters, yeah. So you get to put thrusters where you want it. So you can have 2 thrusters on each side to get nice, good banking speed, or you could just put one and conserve power and just maybe put more guns there instead. The amount of customization you can do in this game was just amazing. And when they throw you into a scenario where you have to go to a planet and extract some kind of resource or fight an enemy, it's really amazing because the mechanics of it are, I don't know, so appealing. I don't know if did you guys ever try it? It's called Nimbatus Space Drone Constructor. It's an indie game.
I've never played it. I've actually never heard of it, so I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, it's a Steam game. I believe it's $19.99, and it's one of the most I would say.
I'm looking it up right now. Okay. Yeah, I see it. It's got kind of like a what's that? The one with the ship.
FTL?
No, sorry. The one with the ship probably isn't enough, huh? You're saying that's not enough.
Rule the waves.
Okay, it was the one where it was actually a fear game with like octopuses who would come and big squids would eat your ship, and you had a whole fear mechanic. You had to manage crew.
Barotrauma?
No, it was like in a fantasy world, but you were on like a 1400s time period type ship, traveling the cannons and stuff that you'd shoot at these fantastical creatures and other ships and pirates and all that. God, okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's cricket sound effects right about now.
Yeah, it'll come to me.
But like the graphics and animations on this, I don't know if you are looking through the screenshots. I'll link them in the description if you guys are listening. But it's really amazing. Just the mechanics, the graphics, the animations. They're just, it really surpassed my expectations of the game. I didn't think when I started up, I was like, I don't know how well this is going to be. But it definitely caught my eye. And it's available for Windows, Mac, and Steam platforms. So that's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. And then the other game that I've been playing, which is, I guess, I don't know if you guys got a chance to play it. It's Tactical Troops. They posted a demo on Steam. This is Slitherine's first K Project game. It's their first indie-funded game.
I still don't know what that means.
What, K Project?
I don't understand what, like, is it just like, oh, we'll put your game on our website? Like, I don't...
Sunless Sea. It was called Sunless Sea. Have you guys heard of Sunless Sea?
No.
Damn it.
I have heard of it.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so that game that you described, Nimbatus or whatever, Nimbatus, it looks a lot... the visual style and it looks like the control style reminds me a lot of Sunless Sea. Where it's the top-down 2D where you go around and explore and you have to manage crew and stuff like that. That's what Sunless Sea was about.
Oh, yeah, it does look like that a lot, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Back. Yeah, the train was derailed, but we're back, right? We're back.
But yeah, K Project, I did a video on it because I really love this project that Slitherine and Matrix has. And if you guys are not familiar with it, it's basically Matrix and Slitherine wanting you to pitch your indie game idea to them. And if it's good enough, like if they're, if they're interested in it, they will fund your project. And so you can make your own indie game funded and published by Slitherine. So two of the games that were announced, one was called Tactical Troops Anthracite Shift, which is coming soon. And then the second one that was just announced is called Steering Abyss. And it's an indie tactical squad-based game where it looks like you're in a submarine. I mean, you're in a submarine and you're like at the depths of the ocean and you come across, I guess, like a civilization down there, like an alien civilization. It reminded me a lot of Abyss. I don't know if you guys remember the movie Abyss from back in the day.
I do vaguely remember it.
It reminded me of like Abyss, and looking at the screenshots and that they have, I'll also link that in the description. It looks really interesting. The trailer is just like, it really is very impactful. It really just kind of wowed me. So this
is an adventure game, right?
They're saying it's an indie tactical squad-based game with strong RPG elements in which you uncover the ancient mysteries of the depths depicted in the classic vein of Lovecraftian horror. So I love the way that description rolls. It sounds very exciting and mysterious, like very mysterious. I feel like it's a mix between like Abyss and that other movie with Dustin Hoffman and Samuel L. Jackson. I always forget about that one. So yeah, I mean, I haven't played the Stirring Abyss, but I played Tactical Troops, the demo. But those are the games that I've been playing.
Have we ever really talked about Avalon, or in particular Avalon Digital stuff on our podcast, on your guys' podcast that I sometimes appear on?
Dude, you've been a regular for like 20 or 30 episodes now. I think it's fair to say it's your podcast.
People don't need to know that.
You're part of the 401k plan.
Yeah, 401k matching, which means if you give me money, then I will take it.
Well, that sounds like a win-win situation for me.
Maybe not for you, but for me, it sounds great. I'll invest it, and if I make some money, I might give you some of your money back.
Avalon Digital. Is this something that we've talked about ever? I don't know.
I mean, I know Avalon Hill.
Oh, you're talking about Carrier Battles that just released?
I was getting to that, yes.
Spoiler alert. Jump ahead, go right to the punchline without any of the build-up.
I mean, well, I think we're all familiar. I even think that we should get Philippe. I don't want to try to pronounce his last name because I don't have it in front of me and I don't really remember it, but I would probably butcher it anyway. But
Hey, that's my thing.
Rated to EU4.
I'm gonna have to kick you off this podcast if you start butchering things. Also,
Philippe. I think he's the famous creator of the board game Europa Universalis. I think he worked.
Also, the legendary Civil War 2. That's why I love him. He made that game. I love Civil War 2.
So yeah, I think he created Ajod or co-founded. I don't remember. I don't know. I don't have his credentials in front of me, but he's well known in the wargaming industry. I think we all know, and he now is the head person in front of Avalon Digital, which I don't really know anything about, but I only was recently contacted about it because I was given press access to the Carrier Battles for Guadalcanal game. So this is one of the games I played recently. I have a long list. This work from home business is really working out for my gaming career. Anyway, Carrier Battles is Avalon Digital. It's a
Dear HR, Eric, the Tortuga Power gamer, is playing many games on the clock.
They don't know that. Look, I feel like I have a pretty negative viewpoint of PC ports when it's like a tablet port to PC. I'm always a little bit critical. I was of this one as well. I posted a semi-positive, but also somewhat critical review of Carrier Battles on my channel, and I don't think it was. I had some crashes. I don't know. The interface. Look it. I'm probably a little bit more. I put the magnifying glass up to a game, which is a port. I just want it. It's like I feel like maybe like a needy partner in a relationship where I'm like, I really want to feel loved. I really want to know that you treat me right when you're coming from a different person. No, this analogy is breaking down.
Where is this going?
I really want to know that a port is like in...
Listen, when you're cheating with Tortuga, he wants to feel like he's number one.
Tell me I'm number one at least. Yeah, I guess if you're going to go to Android, or this one is, I guess, in the Apple App Store. If you're going to come on to PC...
Who would ever publish there, right?
For the iPad version, it's called Carrier Battles for Guadalcanal, and it says it's made by Cyril Jarnot. I don't know if he's part of Avalon Hill.
Yeah, it's a one-man dev team, I believe, and now I think that he was in contact. Is it listed there as Avalon Digital? I don't think so. Yeah, so it's Avalon Digital, which is bringing it to the PC. Which, okay, first of all, great, thank you, Philippe. But on the other hand, I would love to see this game. I think is really, it has a lot of potential, and that's such a cliche way of saying.
Oh,
it's
don't
good,
say that.
Not, but it does. It really. I feel like it could be. I mean, it just needs to smooth out some things. I don't know. TSU, you actually saw me playing it. What were your thoughts about it? I'm gonna pass the buck. Let you say.
I only watched for 30 minutes and I haven't played it. I do have it in my library somewhere. I felt like the maps were too small. Granted, I was watching Midway, so you probably had more ships than other maps, but it just felt like it was too much like, all right, you're going to move left to right across this map, and eventually you're going to spot enemy ships, and then you're going to go after them. But like, there didn't seem to be any tactics from like a naval maneuver perspective. And again, I was only watching, but it just felt like the maps were too constrained. The combat had some really weird results, like 6 unescorted Devastators versus like 8 zeros, and it was like, oh, you shot down 1 Devastator, and then the other, the Devastators all made it in, and lo and behold, their torpedoes apparently work now because that was a thing.
And they sank. Oh man, that pissed me off. And I mentioned that in my video too, which I didn't have as proof. I'm so glad that you brought that up about Eve. I'll slip you a 20 later. Thank you for creating this story, which verifies.
And the 401k matching program has begun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it just felt like the combat results were a little bit weird. I thought visually, as far as like a board game kind of type style, it was fine. But I just felt like there was not enough room for maneuver for the ships. The maps were too small, and then the air combat results just felt weird. They didn't feel like they were properly balanced or scaled. I mean, again, you could get a flight of unescorted bombers come in against a large number of combat air patrol, and the combat air patrol basically did nothing, and then the bombers pretty much always pressed home the attack and always got big hits. And I don't know, it just felt a little bit weird. It didn't feel terribly representative of everything I've read anyway on naval air combat in the Pacific.
Were you there when I got into the actual surface engagement with my battleships?
No, but I will say that like also the turn style and the way that aircraft I think were too weak, and it was too easy to just like keep running your ships east and eventually they'd collide with the enemy surface vessels. Like it just didn't feel at all like Midway, right? Like I know Japan technically did get kind of close to the US carriers, but still, like it did not feel like I was watching a Battle of Midway game.
Yeah, I had a surface engagement where the two battleships, the older ones, but the Congo, I think. What were the two that started in the south? I forget. But it was like the two battleships. I think they had the
Hai or the Haruna or something.
It wasn't the Haruna, but yeah, it might have been the Hiei. Anyways, it was two of the older battleships. They were escorted by some destroyers and maybe a cruiser as well. Ran into I'm not joking, just one light cruiser and 4 American destroyers. Or maybe it was 5, but I think it was 4. Regardless, in this surface engagement, which was midday with no overcast, so I guess decent visibility, the Japanese ended up eating American torpedoes. Had the 2 battleships sank 1 destroyer, and two Japanese destroyers were sank, and both the battleships were damaged in the fight. I was like, what world am I looking at that this would happen? 1 light cruiser and 4 destroyers for the Americans in broad daylight get close enough to actually do damage, physical damage, not just with torpedoes, but with guns.
And in 1942, right? Like, we're not talking 1945 with all the radar and all the advanced technology that the U.S. ships have had by that point. You're talking 1942.
Yeah, anyway, so I think this is kind of an interesting game, and what I took away from it, somebody else mentioned this to me, and then I later internalized it and decided this is my ultimate opinion on the game. I think it's a very good game for Android. I don't think it's on Android, unfortunately. I think it's only on Apple, which is a crying shame because...
Why on Android?
Because I have an Android. I don't have an Apple device.
Okay.
So I would think that it would be great if they would port it from one very exclusive iOS system to, just to Android, which is, if they're focusing on tablets, then focus on tablets. Go to Android. Because this is a game I could see myself playing. It's kind of like a time killer you could use on your phone or on a tablet. But
when are you ever killing time on a tablet nowadays? We're all locked in our homes. Like, it's computer bust, man.
Yeah, this probably won't appeal to me in particular, but I could see it happening. Anyway, I don't want to bog down too much. Carry Battles is an interesting game. Look at it if you'd like, but
I played it on my iPad, on the go, and I really enjoyed every time I played it. The Midway Battle of Guadalcanal. I haven't noticed the things that you were mentioning, but it's been a while since I played it.
I mean, in my session, by the way, I played for like 2.5 hours, and I wanted to get through it because I wanted to establish a reasonable basis for review. But I also played it, and I didn't realize it had been 2.5 hours. So I think that there can be some enjoyability here. That's why I don't want to dismiss the game. I wouldn't call it bad. I just think that it might already be better. Cyril, I think he's the dev. I think he's been working on things. A lot of my comments were pre-release.
I mean, I didn't play it. I mean, the only thing I would add is I think you're right, Tortuga. I think my main criticism, I think there's things to like about it, and it certainly could be something you could pour a bit of time into it from what I could see. I think my main concern would be, one, I don't think I'm interested in a game that's quite that basic, at least from a viewing perspective. I'm more Gary Grigsby than I am mobile ports of carrier games. But then the second part is just the combat results seemed weird. But that theoretically, that's something you should be able to balance and get right. But at least at the point that I was watching, it seemed they were just really weird results.
Amazing job to vetting your own wargaming credentials. I think that's very appropriate on this podcast. Good job.
You know, if I'm going to play a game about carrier operations in the Pacific, I'd rather play something like Gary Grigsby or something like what Task Force Admiral aspires to be. But that's just me. I don't play a lot of mobile games either.
So the App Store reviews, it's 4.5 out of 5, which is really high, out of like around 70 out of 74 ratings. And then the Steam is 24 reviews at 83%. So I don't know.
Okay.
It's interesting. I haven't played the PC version of it. I just remember I really enjoyed the iPad version of it. And
I feel like what I saw, it could be a good game on tablet. I just don't play a lot of games like that.
Yeah. Okay, so another game I've been playing lately has been Shadow Empire. I don't know if are we gonna talk about that later?
That game is, so I know the game fully came out, and I did like my first impressions, and I played quite a bit, and I really enjoyed the game. There's a lot of depth. I think you mentioned, I had a conversation with you where you said there's a lot of complexity in that game, and I do agree. I don't know, it has a quality to it that when I'm playing it, I really enjoy it. Like, there's so much stuff that you can do in that game, from building buildings, expanding your nation, uncovering stuff that was left in the previous wars. I mean, and then there's also like leaders in the game that you have to keep an eye on. So I feel like there's so much to do in the game. Like, I could get lost in that game for days on end.
Yeah, it's a very, very complex game. I mean, to just show you how deep it is, I understood the previous games of this kind, of the other previous VR designs, VIX titles. I understood them. This game, after, I don't know how many hours I've put in, probably 40 or 50, maybe more than that, I don't even know. But I still do not understand the logistics system. So it is a very complicated game. And I don't know if that's entirely to the credit of the developer. Look, it's a one-man dev team. The game is hugely rich. It seems impossible that it is a one-man dev team, but it is. The one thing I would say that is lacking, and this is just, I think, because he doesn't have the resources to fully invest in, like I said, there should be probably a second person who's just in charge of GUI, and that is the presentation of information.
K-Project.
It's very difficult.
What?
K-Project. Get that funding, man. Pay that GUI designer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Vic's gonna. He does the GUI himself, so he's gotten this far, but I feel like it could. There's so much. It's a really tough thing because the game has so much damn information. How do you even show that much information?
The combat system is really cool in the game.
Yeah, it's definitely a war game. It's a 4X war game, and I don't know which one it is more. It's probably more war game than 4X, but it's still 4X, and that's exciting because you have, as you already mentioned, the buildings.
And then there's some buildings that are private, and then there's some that are state-owned. And I thought that was kind of cool. I was like, all right, so these buildings are owned by somebody in this town, right? So I guess from what I understand, the last time I played it, is I can have one of these buildings build tanks or whatever that I want, right? But like, I don't own it. It's not a property of the state.
Yeah, are you talking about the truck station?
I believe so. I just remember like some was public, owned by me, and some was like private, and I was just like, oh, that's pretty cool.
There's a private economy and a public economy. I mean, this is... I love games. The few games I know which have done this... The other ones I know are Aurora 4X, Distant Worlds Universe, who have actually managed to mix private and public economy into a 4X title, basically. And those have done. I've really enjoyed those games, and I think that they've done pretty well for themselves. So the fact that, again, Shadow Empire is a one-man team doing the same thing. Well, I guess Aurora is also a one-man team, but anyways, it's a very complicated game. My review of Shadow Empire would be it's an amazing and amazingly complicated game.
Yeah.
So
I always think, for me, it's like Civilization on steroids. So, like, if you want more complexity than Civilization can offer, this is definitely the game. And that's exactly what I wanted because, I do feel like Civilization, I kind of get tired of it because it's so simplistic. The economy is like, I don't even know if the economy is so basic in that game. Here, it's like making me think and looking at it. And it's like, all right, how does this work? And I really like that. So, it got what I wanted out of it. So, but
that's great. I mean, I think it's a surprisingly well. I don't think it's surprisingly well selling from my point. I expected it to do well, but I think other people are surprised. Maybe even Matrix and Slitherine. I don't know if they're surprised. I have no idea even what the sales are because it's not yet on Steam. We have no idea. But I have a feeling it's doing pretty well, especially again for a one-man dev team. It's certainly going to be a return on the investment, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was very impressed, and we had him on the show. So if you guys are interested, a couple episodes ago we did have him on the show, and it was very eye-opening interviews. I really enjoyed that.
It's funny to think how. I mean, this is from my perspective. Even I was so naive about the game, even having already put in maybe like 10 hours at that time, but boy, I just didn't know anything about the game. My questions, if we were to have him back, would be like so much more intricate. And I don't know if it'd be a good thing to do, by the way. I'm not suggesting that we do it, but I could ask like such, questions about some minutia that didn't even understood existed when we were interviewing him the first time.
I love the on that game. I really love like when you're starting out the game, you have so much that you can do so many variations on the planet that you want to set the game up in. There's so much like different variations. From one of the things is like how far do you want to be from the sun? I'm like, oh wow. And then like how do you want the planet to rotate on its axis at this axis or that axis? So all this will affect the climate that your nation runs into. So I really thought that was awesome.
Yeah, it's extremely well done. So I still have more games. I've been playing a lot lately. I'll just try to jump through these next ones a little quicker. The next one is kind of related to one of our other talking points because Lords of the Realm, I think we talked about Lords of the Realm 2, was a great game. One of my childhood memories, being in high school, going over to my friend's house, playing Lords of the Realm 2. Where does this all fit in? Rising Lords. Rising Lords is a new game. I played a little bit of it. I think it's another one of those games that this is early access. So when I say it's got promise, I mean that literally it's looking good so far. It's already fun, and I expect it'll continue to develop well. Rising Lords is basically a spiritual successor to Lords of the Realm.
It looks good.
So I played a little bit of that. Yeah, it's a fun game, and I think it'll get better. The RPG stuff is not in at all, or at least it wasn't when I played. You couldn't really do anything with your character creation, but they're going to have a little bit of an RPG thing where you make your own hero. I remember you used to play as like, I don't know, the knight or the bishop or whatever, and I don't know if they had any, besides having a personality and voice acting, I don't know if they had any character-specific traits or like gameplay mechanics that they would change. But yeah, this one does. You create your lord and you can add some skill points to him. Anyway, it's a fun little game. I like it.
Yeah, it looks cool.
So that's another one.
I definitely want to try this out. I love the textures in this. Looks really good. I never played the previous game, so I'm gonna try this out as a noob. But it does have good reviews, 176, mostly positive reviews. So that's good.
Yeah, hopefully it'll continue to develop well. And then last but not least, I know THG
How many games have you been playing?
Wait, I got two more actually. I'm gonna just drop names and we're gonna move on.
Dear HR, I think you should be concerned about Eric. I'm not sure he's working at all.
Oh man. I guess part of the problem is, with the COVID situation, we also don't go out as much, and I find myself probably playing more games even on mostly, obviously, in my time off. But even like for my lunch break.
About to be a lot more time off soon.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Anyway, sorry, I just feel like these are all worth mentioning, though. Motorsport Manager, you've been watching me play that. I mean, not watching me play it, but you've seen me playing a ton of that, right, THG?
Yeah, and watching a little bit. I feel like I'm watching more of you play than what I've been playing lately, but anyway, go on.
We're just all hanging out in Tortuga's Discord. Well, it's THG's Discord as well.
Go ahead and plug your Discord over here. Take our podcast over. Take the
THG's
Discord over.
Discord too.
You know, Tortuga's an invasive species.
It's fun. We just hang out there. I wish you would hang out more. It's really fun to have you. Just all sitting and shooting the... Are we allowed to say that?
Shooting the shit? I'm pretty sure every one of our episodes, or more or less, is labeled as explicit. So
is like a... What's the...
Every episode that Jean is on has to be explicit because he'll drop at least 3 F-bombs.
No, I've been working on my F-bombs. I've been trying to work them out because one of the people that on my channel was saying... She's like, dude, I watched this with my kids in the room. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, I'm sorry.
And that's his response. He's like, oh, you watch it with your kids in the room? Oh, fuck, man. I'm so sorry.
I think I told this story somewhere before. But I was in a religion class in college or whatever, and I got up and I gave a presentation, and I screwed something up. And I just instinctively just fuck. And then I realized I just dropped the F-bomb in the middle of a religion class, and then instinctually, without even thinking, I was like, shit! And then God damn it, no!
I got Tourette's, I'm sorry, teacher, I got Tourette's.
Basically.
Fuck shit.
It was just like, I didn't even, like, I compounded mistake upon mistake, and my shame just grew incrementally, and then eventually I just sort of sat there and stood for like 10 seconds collectively. Like, all right, I'm gonna continue now.
This is where you do the Zach Morris Saved by the Bell thing. You say time out and just get the heck out of the room.
Yeah.
Well, I got one more for you. Motorsport Manager, by the way. It's exactly what you'd expect. It's a management game surrounding like the F1 circuit. It's not officially F1, but you just manage your team, your motorsport team. The last one I've been enjoying the hell out of lately is Total War Warhammer 2. Which I think is it's just, I just feel like ever since Rome 2, I've hated Total War. I just had this huge bias against Creative Assembly and all the games. I just had this really distorted perspective, and I didn't see much merit in the games they were making. It seems like too much of a cash grab. You know, you have that negative reaction, and then I finally came back because Warhammer just gets a lot of positive praise about it. And it's a pretty interesting, different way of doing the Total War. I mean, it's their first not historical title, right? So I have been enjoying it a lot. I think it works well.
Yeah, I saw a documentary. They actually have 2 teams. One team that's just doing everything historical, and I think another team that does like IPs. I think they just released Shogun. I think that was their most recent.
Shogun 2?
I think so. Something Shogun.
Oh, okay, probably some new Shogun. Because Shogun 2 that's the last Total War title I liked before Warhammer. Yeah, I think that was really well done, but that was several years, maybe like 6 years ago.
Oh, no, my bad. It's Total War 3 Kingdoms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that released in 2019. Man.
I don't know anything about that one.
It's about the Romance of the Three Kingdoms era in China. It got very, very positive for reviews and reception.
Oh, okay.
37,000, very positive reviews. Wow. $60 though. Wow, that's a premium cost, premium title right there. Usually games on Steam hover around 40.
You know, there was the Steam thing which happened, I don't know, it was a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, which was like clean out your closet, spring cleaning, and they were trying to get you to play new games, and I think some of this came from that. I was like, okay, I'll start playing some new games. Even though I didn't play any of the games Steam wanted me to play, I kind of took this idea like, oh, let's start knocking out a few of these titles I haven't played lately. So, okay, so I have five more games. I'm just kidding.
I was like, shit, have you quit your job?
Please, Matt, what have you been playing?
War in the Pacific, as always. A little bit of Strategic Command, World War II, World at War still, as usual. Those are kind of my two mainstays. I haven't been playing a lot of new stuff. I did, a week or two ago, I was playing a little bit more Scourge of War Waterloo with the 205th anniversary of Waterloo coming up. Actually, tomorrow now. I'm sure this will air after, but at least when we're recording this on the early morning hours of the 17th. So a little bit of Scourge of War Waterloo, which is a Slitherine game. It's a real-time tactical game. Probably the largest scale Napoleonic war game made, with maybe the exception of the what is it? Oh my god, I can't remember the name. The
Total War Napoleon.
No, there's a French developer. I think it's French anyway, who makes a game. It's called.
I think I know what you're talking about.
But talking about Strategic Command, I completely agree with you. I've been playing a lot of that. I never thought I was gonna be able to do this. I've played 130 hours of
Hist
War, that's it. Sorry, what were you saying, Sean?
I was saying while you were looking that I think I've played Strategic Command more than I've played pretty much any other game in my life. I'm at 130 hours last time I checked, which is like...
You haven't played very many games in your life then.
I mean, well, one single game for that amount of time in only a year and a half, 2 years, that to me is...
I saw someone post today on Twitter, they're like, I'm at 10,000 hours in Strategic Command. I was like, how is that possible? It's only...
Wow.
And I see like a lot of the Paradox like faithful like posting like 2,000 hours, 5,000 hours in the various like EU4 or CK2 or whatever. My largest on Steam count anyway is Ultimate General Civil War, 144 hours, but I've definitely played War in the Pacific more than that. And certainly like Panzer General, the original game, I played that way more than that. But
God, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed about my hours.
Well,
I think they're a little bit more than...
A little bit more? You probably played more IL-2 than that.
I'm looking, 110 hours in IL-2, so that's quite a lot.
Okay.
Advanced Tactics Gold, you have 916 hours.
That's not bad.
Yeah, but that's... okay, I have to mention this every time, and especially with Advanced Tactics. I remember that's a game which does not... You can go into screensaver mode with it running. It's a very lightweight game. So I used to just leave it running when I would like go to sleep or when I would go to school. I'd come back, so I might be a little bit skewed.
Oh, I need to do that. Get my numbers up.
Just do that if you want to get your game. If it's like to me, it's like embarrassing. I'm like, oh my god, have I really put that many hours in it? But if you want, you can just do the Tortuga trick and leave your game running while you do a lot of other things. Which I don't think is good for your CPU or graphics card necessarily, but...
Anyway, so I've been playing a little bit of Scourge of War, the game we were talking about before the other Napoleonic game is Hist War. And then I have played a tiny little amount of Armored Commander 2, which is a new like indie roguelike game where you command a tank during World War II. As either the Germans, or actually they have an Italian campaign too, so either the Axis or the Allies. There's like a Canadian campaign, there's an American campaign from like 1944 to the conclusion of the war, there's a Poland and a France campaign, so it's kind of interesting, but I haven't played a lot of it.
I was going to ask you about that if you didn't bring it up, so thank you, but can you explain a little bit about the gameplay, or can you describe the gameplay? I don't really understand the gameplay for it.
So it kind of looks like a DOS-style game from like an art-style perspective. But essentially, you are a commander of a tank in World War II. When you go into each campaign, depending on when that campaign takes place, you can choose from like a list of different tanks that you would have been able to operate on that side at that time in the war. So, the Americans in 44 could have like the Sherman, M4A3, the M4A3 with like up armor, the 76 millimeter version of it, a bunch of different versions of the Sherman. The British have the Sherman, the Firefly, which is a 76 millimeter version of the Sherman. The Germans might have the Panzer III. They might have various versions of the Panzer III, or whatnot, depending on the year again that you're playing in. So basically, you go into the game, you select the campaign you want to play, you select the tank you want to command. You can manage your crew, so you can give them traits as they gain experience to make them better or more proficient at certain things. Their morale goes up and down throughout the campaign. You have to sort of pick your ammo loadouts for your tank going into each campaign. And then basically you just get these sort of generated maps where the core of the game takes place. You go in, you play, I think one battle typically is like 15 or like an hour or something like that. But basically you go in to the campaign, you see this map. Every day you get a map of like a combat map that you have to sort of advance across and take different strategic points or destroy the enemy on the map. And you just kind of drive your tank around the map in 15 to 1 hour increments. And then when you enter a section of the map that has enemy troops, which you generally don't know if there's enemy troops in there or not, you have to fight the enemy. If you defeat them, you take over that section of the map. And then you slowly, ever so slowly, progress your way across the map to take these key strategic points. When you're fighting the battles, like, if you go into a section of the map and there's bad guys in there, you'll go into like this battle map, which sort of puts your tank in the center of the map and enemy units can spawn all over the map. And then you kind of drive around the map and try and destroy them. And, you have all these different variables that affect your ability to sight or destroy the enemy. If your tank is buttoned up, you can't see as far. If your tank is moving, you're not as accurate when you shoot. Depending on the angle that the shells hit your armor, it may penetrate or may not. As you move around, you have to assign crew members different jobs, be it spotting, reloading, operating the machine gun. As you fire at the enemy, you have different chances of penetrating the armor or destroying the unit, and kind of a lot of dice rolls. It's a very slow game, as I think most roguelikes are. It's hard for me to describe because I've never really played this kind of a game before, but it's a very long game. It takes a lot of time to play out, but it's also very easy to die. If your tank gets hit, there's a chance it gets penetrated. If it gets penetrated, there's a chance that it gets destroyed. If it gets destroyed, there's a chance that each one of your individual crew members can be killed or wounded. If your character itself is killed, then you lose the game.
So wait, is it a little bit? It kind of sounds like a little bit like a Legionary's Life. Is there any parallel there?
I think a Legionary's Life is a roguelike as well. What I would say is this game is much slower pace. A Legionary's Life you can play much more quickly. The 1944 American campaign is like 45 or more days that you fight, and each day is probably including like 10 to 15 battles that you have to fight to take over a map.
Lord.
Each battle probably takes 10 to 20 minutes. So like it's a very time-consuming game.
Who do they think these tank drivers are? What tank driver fought in 15 battles?
None of them, but as I understand it, that's kind of what roguelikes like Dwarf Fortress and other games like that are like. They very much turn into time sinks. I think a Legionary's Life is a similar style game. It probably counts as a roguelike, but what I would say about a Legionary's Life is I feel like with Armored Commander 2, you're telling the story that you create by what happens in your battles. I feel like a Legionary's Life is very narrative-driven. And it is very well written and tells a very clear story of your character's march across Spain and then North Africa and then Illyria as you fight through the Punic Wars. So I think that's the fundamental difference.
Okay.
A Legionary's Life to me grounds me more in what's actually going on outside of the battlefield, whereas Armored Core 2 just kind of tells you like, oh, you're in the Polish campaign. It's September 1st. You're fighting a breakout mission. You need to take these 3 golden spots on this map. Go at it. Like there's no, your tank commander comes to you and tells you his daughter was killed in an Allied air raid in Germany and blah, blah, blah. Like there's nothing like that.
Okay, so now patent pending, or I should say copyright, on our future game, which is going to be exactly that. The story-driven version of Armored Commander 2, or...
I mean, who knows? Maybe more will come. It's in early access, so I mean, the game is definitely not finished yet. But that's kind of one game that I've been playing. I've heard it's done really well. I think the developer said they were expecting to sell a couple hundred copies, and they sold like 1,000 in the first week.
Oh, wow.
It's only like $7. I mean, if you're into those kind of games, it can be really interesting, but it hasn't really held me all that much. I'm not really interested in playing 30 hours of a game like that. Just not something I'm super interested in. I am curious to check out the new DLC, Emperor DLC for EU4, but I haven't actually tried that out yet.
We should do that together.
I've heard good things about it. But I need to, I haven't actually made time to play it. So yeah, we should definitely do a multi.
Let's all play together, We should all do like, me, you, and Tortuga play as like us. We have three.
No, actually, I don't think I want to play that anymore. Tortuga, message me on the side, and we can play just by
Yeah. Oh my gosh! I just my neck's cramping.
Okay.
And suddenly I can't play EU4.
I'm gonna tell my mom on you.
But yeah, I mean, I bought a couple other games. I played this game called Bombergeddon, which looked like it was going to be an interesting sort of Cold War 1950s bombing game. And when I got into the actual core gameplay, it just was kind of a waste of time. It was kind of like move your bombers across the map in a turn-based style like 10 times and hope you don't run into radars. And like, it was just not super interesting.
How much was that?
It was like $5 or so. I don't know. It was cheap, but it wasn't really. I don't know. I didn't even make a video on it. I was just like, okay, whatever. And I downloaded a game called Evil Democracy 1932, but I haven't played that yet.
Ooh.
I've just been in a bit of a rut. I haven't seen a lot right now that I want to play. There's a lot of games that are going to be coming out that I'm really excited about. I can't wait for the Civil War Grand Tactician: The Civil War. I can't wait for that to come out. I keep waiting to see the update where Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts adds their campaign. I don't know if it's coming anytime soon, but
yes.
Keep going, because there's one I know that you're aiming for.
What?
Look I went to the Bombergeddon, by the way, and I watched the Steam trailer, and God, it's so good. It's so good. It's 39 minutes. Sorry, 39 minutes. That'd be even better. 39 seconds of a trailer of like an air siren blaring, a clack, whatever, and just a picture. There's no actual movement. It's just 39 seconds of an air raid sound, and World War III is about to begin being displayed as a picture.
I mean, that probably sold me on it. Like, someone was like, oh, you should.
There's no gameplay. The movie, it's a video with no image changing. It's just a one little image the entire 39 seconds.
Yeah, and then, I don't know. I think I'm really looking forward to Grand Tactician, which is supposed to come out in the summer. It's summer now, or what are we, like 5 days away from summer? So it should definitely be coming out. I demand it come out now.
Well, the about Grand Tactician, so that's more aimed for the end of summer, I think.
I'll tell them they said summer, so it better come out in 5 days, or I'm going to file a lawsuit against them.
That sounds good. I mean, 5 days.
So I'm kind of curious. You're leaning toward the game that I know you're going to mention.
I am?
Well, it was recently announced that I know you probably had a heart attack.
Well, the game you're thinking about, I don't think is going to come out.
It was recently announced that TSG is about to have a heart attack? When was this?
I feel like this is a HIPAA violation. So I think you're probably trying to talk about Microprose B17. I don't know what it is, B17 2, B17 The Mighty Eighth 2, whatever it is. They announced basically a spiritual successor to B17 The Mighty Eighth, which was a classic that I played a lot of when I was younger. But I don't think we're going to see that anytime this year. I mean, that probably is 2021 late 2021, I would guess. We haven't really seen any footage about it.
Didn't you say, I want them to remake some of those incredible classics? I think a couple episodes ago
I did, but it seems to me like they're focusing more on VR and co-op, which, while it could be a fun experience, I don't think I was looking more for someone taking Gary Grigsby's bombing the Reich and mixing that with B-17 The Mighty Eighth and creating some kind of hybrid, or something like European Air War, where you could have hundreds upon hundreds of bombers and fighters all in the air simultaneously. If they do that, then yes, I will be 100% behind it. And I'm sure I will play it either way, but I'm worried it will just be it's VR, it's a co-op thing, and there's 5 bombers in the air and it won't feel right.
But is it supposed to be B17, like the Mighty Eighth, or maybe it's the Tremendous Ninth? I don't know, whatever their sequel title would be, or is it that just instead of the Eighth, it's the Ninth? That was so clever. Whatever. Anyway, forget it. B17, is it B17 or is it B17 2? I mean,
I don't know.
The original B17 came out. The original B17, which came out for Microprose, did not have that strategic layer.
I know,
right?
No, you're right.
That was added in the much later version, which was great. I mean, I also agree with you, by the way. I think it would be amazing if they have that. But if it's just a sequel to the original, then maybe what we can hope for is they'll do the same thing and the game will progress to add the strategic layer later.
Well, this is according to VR Focus. Microprose returns with The Mighty Eighth, a 10-player World War II B-17 simulator.
Okay. Well, they didn't go with my tremendous ninth, which I really feel like was a missed opportunity, but that's okay.
It is being built with VR specifically in mind, but it is also playable without a VR headset. It will be a reboot of B-17 Flying Fortress The Mighty Eighth 2000, allowing players to fly the bomber, operate the guns, and drop bombs as they carry out daring missions.
It's a mistake then. It's not a reboot of The Mighty Eighth if it doesn't have that strategic layer. It's a reboot of the original B-17.
Yeah,
which I don't think was titled The Mighty Eighth.
Yeah, you're right. The original B-17 was not titled The Mighty Eighth. One interesting thing, which I am kind of excited about, is apparently the game will also allow you to fly in a B-24 Liberator, which I don't think I've ever seen a game that allows you to fly in a B-24 Liberator. So that could be kind of neat, just because it's different. Are
you going to get VR, Matt?
I'm probably going to get VR anyway. Like between this and there's another game that I've seen called
the Star Trek one. That's right. Yeah.
No, it's called Valiant Effort. It is a game about Lancaster bombers over Germany in the nighttime bombing raids, and it's basically focusing on like Canadian Lancaster bombers, and you basically are a crew member of a Lancaster bomber between like late 1943 all the way up to just after D-Day in 1944. And so it sounds similar to like the B-17 game, except the game's going to focus very heavily on like a campaign where you're a crew member and you're going through, various missions over Germany. And it's also VR centric, although again, doesn't require it.
So is it, I do have VR, and I did download it was a free game, quote unquote game. It's a
different game. You're talking. There's a B-17 like Berlin Blitz VR experience that was put together by the BBC, which is also interesting. It's a Lancaster, but you're a British Lancaster, and it's a mission over Berlin in 1943, and it uses like real audio that was recorded from the same raid from like a BBC correspondent who went on this bomber. That's a cool looking experience, but this one is supposed to be like, I think it's supposed to be like a full campaign, like a real game. They were showing that you can. It doesn't require VR either, I don't think. But it is, it almost looks like B-17 The Mighty Eighth, but as a Lancaster crew member, which I think is also really cool. So like, there's a bunch of these games that are coming out that are not necessarily requiring VR, but it seems like they're certainly catering to VR. And I think, once we get this place sold and find a place that we can afford, God help us, and we find a house, a single family house, which I would pray, I really want a yard. Once we stop talking about my housing dreams, and once we buy something like that later this year, I'm hoping to pick up a VR set, maybe around the holidays, with all the COVID stuff and everything like that. Maybe if the economy's still dragging a bit, there will be some good sales. I don't know, but I'll probably pick up a VR headset later this year.
Do you guys feel like VR is kind of like the next wave of gaming? Like that's going to be the standard, like in 10, 15 years, we're going to look back and say, we played games without VR? No. Okay. Why is that?
I think VR is more similar to 3D TV of a few years ago, where it was largely a gimmick for a lot of games. But I do think there are specific game types that VR works for. I think flight sims are one of them, although I have talked to a few pretty hardcore flight simmers who all say VR is an abysmal failure and not worth it and doesn't work very well for flight sims. So
I don't know who those people are. I'd like to talk with them. It's mainly just the hardware is not able to, like, we need better hardware to be able to render things at a good enough, resolution and at high enough frame rates.
I just don't think until you have visual pass through where I can see outside my headset and see my keyboard and my joystick and all that other stuff.
They have some stuff like that, right? There's a hotkey you can toggle where you can start seeing what's around you.
If you have a GeForce 2080, right, and then you hook up a headset to the computer, isn't it all the graphical power that you need?
I mean, it's still not. VR requires a lot of processing power. I don't think any VR set is anywhere near what its capability is. But I think VR's primary benefit is in things like simulations and experience-driven stuff. I think you will see potentially someday like movie, like gaming sort of mixing where you see, that experience becomes blended. But I do think that I would say the majority of games, people just want to sit on their couch. They just want to sit at their computer, just relax. They don't want to put a headset on. They don't want to look like an idiot in their living room. Certainly social gaming, when you're playing with friends, you don't want to have to play with a VR headset. I don't think it will ever become the norm, but I do think it could be, a big component add-on for certain types of games and experiences.
I think I'm going to go a slightly different line. Maybe it's not that different actually, but I think in 10 to 15 years, most gamers will have a VR headset that they're using for games. Not necessarily all games. I still think that there are, like, strategy games. When are strategy games ever really... I guess you could do it eventually, but it just doesn't...
Like, why, though? Like, why would you ever do that? Also, I'm not convinced that people want to play VR Madden, right? Like, do they want to play VR sports games? Do they really want to feel like they're running around, or do they prefer that top-down approach?
Yeah. I think that in 10 to... Maybe more on the 15-year time period, that you could actually see games where you're playing as a basketball player.
As an option, yes, but I don't think that is the fundamental... I don't think customers fundamentally want that to be the primary experience. I think, again, that's why I feel like simulations, it comes down to, like, if you're trying to tell an immersive story or you want that experience, it will be an option. But I don't think it will be the primary way that people play all games. I'm still a little bit skeptical because I think you've got to get the price down to like $50 somehow to really have it be the thing that everybody has. We've never had a game accessory that costs $100 plus that has ever been widely adopted.
Well, I mean, I would think of it as just the same thing as when you get an Xbox or a PS3 or whatever. I mean, people buy steering wheels for those and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's not everybody. Nowhere close to everybody who buys those systems buys those headsets or buys those steering wheels, buys joysticks. That's... I
mean, I think of it as this. I think your first analogy was a little bit closer, where you talked about the TV. I think that this is going to be like, to me, it's more like a move to like 4K TVs. I don't think it's going to be the same as that, because that is just a strict upgrade from lower resolution TVs, and this is different. Obviously, it's different. It's a step to the side as well as potentially up. But I think that it's going to be more popular than... it's not a gimmick. It's more than that, because it definitely adds a huge immersion factor. But yeah, it hasn't been worked out.
I don't think it'll ever be something that's going to take over strategy gaming. You're not going to see Gary Grigsby's War in the Pacific, B. Nimitz VR headset. Walk down the aisle, talk to Rochefort, let him know that Midway's coming.
Think about this from a different perspective. What if, have you seen this Ready Player One movie? If you haven't, don't see it. It's not, I do not recommend it.
Yes, I have seen that, and no, gaming will never, not in our lifetime, be like that.
I would love that. That would be sick.
Well, what I'm saying is you could actually, maybe you have this is probably beyond 15 years. Now we're talking maybe in 30 years. But you could have a reality where people step into VR to, like, do their strategy gaming from, like, a VR perspective. I don't know how, like, maybe there's probably a clever way to do it in a more interesting manner than just on a flat monitor.
Maybe. I'm not saying it's not possible to evolve. I'm just saying that in the next 5, 10, probably 15 years, I don't see VR fundamentally transforming the gaming experience. I'm not saying that it won't be popular, right? Like, there are high-end joysticks for high-end flight sims, right? People spend $200 on high-end HOTAS or whatever it's called, joysticks. I think VR will be something similar for certain games, for certain subsets of gaming. It will become, the accessory that everybody expects you to have when you play it. But I don't think that it will fundamentally shift gaming in this, like, it's going to take gaming over. It's a peripheral. And it will be important for certain types of gaming experiences, and it will be optional, too, because game developers aren't going to spend tons of money on a game like The Last of Us 2 and make it VR only, because they would just have no market to sell to.
In that sense, I would say it is more like the 4K TVs. Some people are going to have it, a lot of people are going to have it, and there's going to be a lot of people who don't.
But are people getting 4K TVs because they want them, or are they getting them just because they're getting a new TV and it's a good TV? I don't think it's anywhere like 4K, right? Like, if I'm going to buy a brand new TV, I'm not specifically necessarily looking for a 4K TV. I'm looking for good price. I'm looking for a lot of things. But like, I don't know. I think there's such a difference between 4K TVs versus 1080p. Like, that shopping experience is completely different. Because the 4K TV is buying a good computer with a good graphics card with a good monitor, but then you have to buy something extra. Like that, at that point, that's when that's what VR is. That's something extra.
We agree to disagree, or we disagree to agree. I don't know.
Well, this podcast will age well for me, let me say.
Mark my words. 15 years from now.
15 years from now, Tortuga is going to be sitting there looking at his VR headset he hasn't picked up in 5 years, and he's going to be like, God.
What's the over-under? I say in 15 years, split the room, right? This is split the room. I think 35% of gamers will own a VR headset.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, I don't know. I think what's the percentage of gamers that own a joystick? It'll probably be something similar.
No, I think it'll be more than that.
I also don't think that like 30% of so if 30% of gamers own a VR headset, fundamentally gaming will not change because
but that's the same thing as how many people own a 4K TV.
In 15 years, 99% of new TVs sold will be 4K or better. That's the difference.
I'm not talking about in 15 years. I'm saying the analogy is 4K TVs now versus TVs now.
But they're completely different experiences, Tortuga. They're not.
I understand. I understand. I mentioned this already. It's a parallel thing and a move up or down, but it's not just a strict upgrade. Whereas 4K TVs are. I mean, I would say that they're just simply an upgrade. But I'm still saying that
a VR headset is like buying a motorcycle and deciding to get a sidecar. And
I don't. Whatever. I've already made my statement. 35%. In 15 years, if you disagree, go ahead and disagree. I think it'll be true, and we'll find out.
I don't know. That's a reasonable percentage, but I also don't think that changes gaming in a meaningful way if 1/3 of gamers have
like right now, I don't think that people have... I don't think that you have 35% to 35% of people who own a TV own a 4K TV. I don't think so. I'm just trying to say that there's enough people that... Movies, shows, whatever, they try to appeal to a 4K TV because they know there's enough of an audience. And I don't even know if that, quote-unquote, enough of an audience, it is even 35% of the people who own a TV. And yet, it's transformed the way things are done.
3D TV analogy is far better because with a 4K TV, you can shoot everything so that it's ready in 4K, and then if I have a 1080p, everything looks the same. It just doesn't look as good because the screen quality isn't as good. If you develop a game for VR and you don't develop a non-VR version of the game, you can't play it without a VR headset.
But you can generally develop a game for VR at the same time that you're developing it for just normal gameplay, for flat screen. Look at IL-2. IL-2, do you think that basically you just need to make the 3D world instead of generating it, instead of putting it only through one monitor, you now have two different focal points. So you're generating twice the amount of data, but...
That's different, though. I think, again, that's why I'm saying I think simulations are where VR is going to thrive, and that's because fundamentally in a simulation game like IL-2, you're sitting in a cockpit stationary. You don't have to worry about moving your actual character around. Yes, you have to fly your plane, but you have to do that in a 2D world anyway. Or 3D world without VR anyway. Like I think games like RPGs are going to struggle to really figure out how VR works without developing completely different experiences. Like, yeah, some games like I think Skyrim has VR, but like it's not really. No one's going to buy VR because of Skyrim.
Strategy games, war games, all these kinds of things. But the most dominant market force or market proportion for games is action games, which will all benefit from VR.
An action game becomes becomes much more complex. Design an action game from the ground up for VR to then convert it to non-VR.
That's now. But I don't think that'll be the case in 10 years, 15 years.
We'll see, but I don't think IL-2 is a good comparison. I think a game where you're stationary in your vehicle is much easier to develop for VR.
Okay, that's true. I mean, I think that we will have solved that 10 to 15 years from now. Because VR has come a pretty long way even in the last 10 years.
Are you developing your game for VR?
Absolutely. Every strategy game needs to be in VR, starting tomorrow. We'll have to have a separate episode on VR if we want it, because I mean, I basically have nothing more to say on this.
VR, the Apple killer? Question mark.
I mean, me personally, I think VR is basically in the future. I think the majority of all games will be developed in VR, from like Call of Duty type of games to simulation. I think that's kind of the next revolution. I think strategy games are going to kind of adapt to that, and the way I can see it being appealing is like I put on a VR headset, and in that VR headset it's going to be very similar to, I don't know if you guys remember the game Ruse, the trailer that they had, where you walk up to a table and you have like the battlefield in front of you and you have your opponent on the other side, and you physically grab, you know, units and such and move them throughout the map. I think something like that would be very interesting.
Sean, I think you're onto it. At least at one convincing or at least compelling way that you could do strategy games is actually have you sitting over the tabletop.
Yeah.
Which is weird because we're going full circle from tabletop to PC back to tabletop from the PC.
I just don't think that for the majority of gamers, they have a desire to put on a big bulky headset when they're sitting in their living room to actually experience gaming in that way. I just don't think the majority of gamers want to do it.
We'll see.
And if gamers don't want to do it, the market won't move.
But you got to look at games like the recent game Alex that kind of took off. Everybody's pretty much playing it. My buddy bought it, and I think it was like $50 or $60.
Yeah, that's a
What
perfect
game?
example. You don't know about Half-Life Alex?
Oh, that game that was built for... Yeah, I just have no interest in it, but...
I know, but I think it's a good...
And I don't know anybody who's playing it personally.
I know that it like made the top of Steam. I know that was kind of like one of the...
It's also made by Steam, so...
That's true. That is true.
So tonight I'm drinking, by the way... I'll leave this in here for later. I am drinking the champagne of beers.
Miller High Life?
No.
I don't... Look at... I can feel the judgment pouring through the internet.
There is no judgment here. I'm from Wisconsin, man. Miller High Life all the way.
I love Miller High Life. and my wife... This is funny because I got it because my wife doesn't like it. And then we're kind of like, okay, you won't really drink it. She has wine, whatever. She's drank as much as I... You can't. Miller High Life is
It's
good.
a champagne
like
beer, man. It's like 70 cents per bottle, too. It's cheap as hell.
It's so cheap and so good.
I know it's cheap because that's what I used to order when I was going out to this, going out when I was back in the day. But yeah, I can never go back to that. I tried like a cheap beer, I think a year or two ago, and I think we were even recording it. I think I said I have a Coors Light, and I was just like, just looking back on that, I was like, what's wrong with me?
Coors Light, America.
By the way, I think I saw something the other day that said that macro beers, or they called them dad beers, are doing really well in the COVID world. I don't know if it's because a lot of people lost their incomes and they're cheap, or if it's because they're like comforting, like nostalgia, but apparently they're doing very well.
Oh, wow.
Well, I have been buying more Miller High Life than I recently, or that I have before COVID, so maybe I'm just another one of those statistics.
Trendsetter.
Trendsetter.
I am drinking Leinenkugel's Honey Weiss.
That sounds interesting.
It's a Miller beer also. It's Leinenkugel's is like I think they're primarily regional, but it's like a craft brand that Miller owns. It's used to be an independent brewery in northern Wisconsin, but Miller bought them out, or is it western Wisconsin?
Is that like the Lexus to Toyota?
I don't know. I mean, maybe they make a lot of like it's. I think the better comparison for Leinenkugel's would be something like Sam Adams. Like they're similar in sort of style and approach. I think the beers are very different, but they tend to have like they've got a beer. What's it called? I can't remember the name. It tastes like Fruit Loops. They also have probably their biggest beer that I usually see is called Summer Shandy, which is kind of like a light like soda, like fruity sort of like Rodler type style beer. It's very big in at least Wisconsin and Chicago during the summer months. And then Honey Weiss, which is like I think it's a lager, but it's like it's infused with some honey, so it's a little bit sweeter. It's pretty good.
And me, I am just having black coffee as usual. We did actually take our first trip to Starbucks, and I haven't had a iced coffee for like, I would say probably what? How long have we been in quarantine? I just lost track at this point.
First trip to Starbucks ever?
No, since the quarantine began, so
Oh, okay.
I guess March. And I was like, it's probably going to be taste the same as what I have at home. And I'm like, geez, man, I missed. It was completely different. It was like, man, I missed this taste. So thankfully, things are opening up again, so we can start enjoying the little things.
Yeah, so we can all go out and get COVID now. Woo!
I told my wife. I told her. I said, listen. If that ever happens, like if we catch COVID, right? Like it's day one, we got COVID. I told her, I was like, look, I am going to the liquor store and I'm going to buy the most expensive bottle of scotch because if I'm going down, I'm going to go down happy.
By the time you know it, you'll probably feel so sick that you aren't exactly going to be drinking, but it's not a bad idea. Get a nice scotch in before you kick the bucket. I was just back in Wisconsin with some friends over the weekend, and we were hanging out at a friend. His family, like 2 years after he left college, his family bought, like, they sold their house in the suburbs, and they bought like this. It's just a house, but it's like a farmhouse that was like converted to like this giant house. So it's kind of cool because it's got like all the farm, like basically they're living on an old farm, but the farmhouse is very nice. And they've got a barn, and they just don't really have any crops. Like a lot of the farm was kind of, I don't know, whatever. It was kind of cool. We're just hanging out, like, campfire, drinking some good old Miller Lite, and I don't know. It was a good time. But feels like that kind of stuff is so rare and far between. Like it's bizarre. My friend lives in D.C. and he was back in Wisconsin because, in his words, Wisconsin is on Team Freedom. And unlocked, and the lockdown is done there. So he came back, and because his wife could work remote, and his wife isn't allowed to go back into the office until like October. So like he went back to Wisconsin. We just had like this get together of a bunch of people who haven't seen each other in like over a year. But it's weird, like getting together in those kind of gatherings, because I think it's the first time I've been with more than like 2 or 3 people in any side of social gathering. We're all outside, somewhat socially distanced. But it's like the first time I've been with like more than 2 or 3 people outside, and like, or inside for that matter, and like, I don't know, it seems like 4 or 5 months. It's just been such a weird start to the year.
Yeah, it's and I heard come fall, the COVID is going to come back, but not come back, but the second wave is going to hit, and then we have the regular flu that's going to hit. So that's going to be a fun time. So I'm going to try to enjoy the summer. And then once the fall comes and we all have to kind of hang out at home a little bit more, at least we will have Grand Tacticians: The Civil War, which I can like live the rest of my life on, and Panzer Corps 2 actually has 2 DLCs coming up, so I'm going to be kicking that. I'm going to be playing around with that quite a bit. So one of the DLCs is actually going to focus on the Spanish Civil War. So
is on what?
The Spanish Civil War.
Huh. Panzer General 2 had like the first couple scenarios were in the Spanish Civil War.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Is the podcast still going, by the way? We didn't conclude, did we? I had to take a leak.
That's going to stay in the podcast. Well, all right, I'll finish it.
Don't forget about Crusader Kings 3, man, coming in September, just in time for the second wave.
Oh, that's right.
I'm serious. We got to do some EU4.
I'm down for some EU4. By the way, did you guys see that new mod that came out for Hearts of Iron 4?
No, which one?
I forget what it's called, but apparently there's a new mod out. My Nemesis YouTube channel with similar initials is playing it. But he it looked like it was a mod that started it starts Hearts of Iron 4, and it like brings the start date up to like 1850 something. So basically, it's like mid-Victoria gameplay through to like 2000, I think. They tried to turn basically Hearts of Iron into like EU4, where you've got like a 200-year campaign.
Oh, wow.
Is it End of a New Beginning?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Here. It's called 1850 to 2050?
That's what I said. They tried to turn it into a 200-year thing.
Jeez. As good reviews, it looks like.
It was I think it's relatively new. Yeah, End of a New Beginning. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious how that works, because like I feel like the mechanics for Hearts of Iron aren't very well geared toward like colonialism and like non-major wars. But it'll be interesting to see. I might download that and give that a go.
Yeah, maybe they figured out a way around that.
Yeah, maybe.
Heartsfire 4 will be better as soon as you can control your units and not have to leave them to AI. That's where I've always stood on.
Well, you know what? Skynet's going to crush you the second that actually stands up. It's going to be like, listen, Tortuga, you don't know what you're talking about. I got you. AI all the way, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
This is really interesting. I'm going to have to try that out.
Oh, I was worried you were talking about our podcast for a second, and I was going to say, no, it's not.
So I'm drinking water now because I'm run out of Miller High Life.
So get more Miller High. Well, aren't you crack a joke about it being water anyway? You don't have any more?
Gosh, you know how potent this stuff is. You got to really ration yourself.
All right, buddy. I guess it feels like we have run out of steam. We are a World War II battleship, and a shell just went through our boilers. Half of our engineers in the lower holds have been turned to mush from high-pressure steam escaping into the engineering compartments, and our momentum is slowing. We are making only 15 knots. We should be making 30. It's time to wrap this episode up.
And before we close out for this episode, I want to remind you guys, if you haven't already, to subscribe to our podcast. And if you could, leave a review of our show on the podcast app you use. It goes a long way for us. Thank you.
And that does it for episode 56, and we will catch you guys in the next one.
Well, stop. Wait.